Okay, thank you everyone for joining us again for the next panel. If we held an FX Trends, Google Trends survey for the industry, I think regulation would easily become the most sought after term. It was even the situation in the previous panel. So we're here to expand more on regulation in FX, from unregulated brokers and licenses to MiFID II and the way banks are connected to all of that. Michael Pearl, Head of Intelligence at Finance Magnates, who also researches the topic, will lead the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Hello, everybody. Welcome. So, we'll be discussing regulations. You know, the industry is becoming more and more challenging. We have the growing competition, and we have the reputation issues. And of course, we have regulations, which are becoming maybe the most important and the most troubling issue for brokers. So we have quite a diverse panel here, and I'm sure you'll be all interested in hearing what our speakers have to say, because they have very different viewpoints, very different perspectives about the regulatory process. So we'll just start with Joseph. Guys, please introduce yourselves and speak about your viewpoint of the current regulatory status for a minute or so, and then we'll move on to the questions. Please, Joseph.
Hello, everyone. My name is Joseph, and I'm an executive director of JFT Brokers, and I'm also the chief legal officer of the company. I'm in the financial industry the last 6 years, and I've been dealing with mainly regulation, as my background is, I'm a barrister at law. I would like firstly to say about the regulation that from our side, we don't think that it's an issue. We would like, the last 2 years, 3 years, we've been visiting CySec, and we've been discussing with them, trying to push them and make them understand that they need to push all the firms towards the same direction and be very strict with everyone. Our biggest issue was that we are, and that's what I consider as an issue, we've been complying with all regulations, and the competition was not doing the same. So we had a disadvantage. Now, finally, we think that it's a time that CySec will make the move and try to secure a same level for all the brokers.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tzvi Gabay, and fortunately or unfortunately, I'm a lawyer. I spent a few years working in the United States for a large law firm representing clients and individuals and corporates before the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. And when we returned to Israel, I was appointed as the head of enforcement at the Israel Securities Authority. So I was part of the management of the Israeli regulator. I have many, many, many hours of interaction with the SEC. And as such, I will try to take you backstage and help you understand what the regulators are thinking when they tell you what they're telling you. And I can tell you that in the panel this morning, in the breaks and in the conversations here, regulation comes up all the time. I think everyone knows to talk the talk, but I don't think that many of you know how to walk the walk and really get what the regulators want, and I'll try to help you with that.
Hello, everyone. First, it's a great honor to be here again. Thank you, Finance Magnates. And it's a great honor to sit with a colleague and friends. My name is Maor Lahav. I am one of the co-founders of Panda Trading Systems. We've been in the market for 10 years now, and we are empowering some of the largest brokers around, regulated and unregulated. Today, in the office, we have at least 10 meetings a month of companies or individuals that come to us and ask us, what do you think? Should we go to the regulated way? Should we open an unregulated? Should we go Forex? Should we go to the binary? We have specific advisors for that, but I'm here to share with you the knowledge that we collected about it and all the dynamic, because it's always changes. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Tatarnikov. I'm CEO and chairman of the Finacom PLC Limited, which is also well known as the Financial Commission, Alternative Dispute Resolution Forum for unregulated and regulated brokers as well. So I'm happy to be here. Thanks a lot to Finance Magnets to giving me this opportunity to speak today in front of you, and we'll be happy to discuss any possible questions you might have about the regulation. We'll share my experience, and just as a start, before we get into the more deeper conversation, I would like to say that regulation will never be easier. Of course, it's just going to be harder and harder, and sooner or later, I guess, it's just a matter of time, but all the brokers will become regulated somehow. So this is my intro. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ron Finberg from Capitec Regulation. We're a technology company that provides automation services for MiFID II in EMIR and ASIC regulation. So if you're a broker that has that regulation, you can come to us to talk about how to automate your products. Our overall view when it comes to regulation is similar to a little bit what Maor mentioned, how there's a question, do you want to become regulated or not? But regardless of whether you want to go the regulator or not, there's the fact that the cost of business has gone higher. So you're either becoming regulated and you have to pay for things like MiFID II and EMIR, which I'm just going to pitch once again, we could do it cheaper than other places. Or if you don't want to become regulated, and then you'll have higher payment processing fees. So one way or another, the cost of business is going higher, and then the question is, how do you contain that and make it easier for your operations in order to take regulation, but still smoothly run your business?
Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the first question, and I want to ask you quite a general question. You know, the regulators are willing to take more extreme steps, it seems, during the last year. Some countries banned binary options trading or even FX trading and CFD trading altogether. Some of them banned marketing, which is basically, to some extent, the same thing. In your point of view, what is the purpose of the regulators in doing that? Do they want to kill the industry altogether, or do they want to make the stronger and the more decent brokers survive? Please, Joseph.
From my point of view, I think the regulator, in no case, they don't want to close the industry, especially in Cyprus, and where the forex industry is so big, and the profits of the country are so high because of this industry. So definitely, what they are trying to do is to clean the market from all the, first of all, from the unregulated brokers, definitely, and also for the regulated brokers, they lost control. They need somehow to find a way to put in place the measures that will limit all this exposure of the country in front of the European of ESMA. So I think that they are moving towards that direction. They will the marketing, the bonuses, all these aggressive strategies that all the firms used to use in Cyprus, I think slowly are over, and they will enforce them to follow more simplified procedures that even the retail clients will be able to understand. Because before the last 6 months, most of the clients have been registering for huge bonuses and all these marketing things, and they had no idea how they could get the bonus, how they could get their money back. So I think all these things slowly will be eliminated.
Thank you. Zvi?
Okay, so let me tell you two things about regulators. First of all, first let's talk about us, right? Observation. We all compete. We compete with our peers. I compete with other law firms. Also, regulators compete. They compete over power. And when one regulator, like the Israel Securities Authority, for example, decides to set a very aggressive tone on a certain industry, other regulators will follow. They may not follow all the way through, but they're going to follow because they just can't afford allowing one regulator to gain so much power and get so much, make so much noise on one thing. The second thing you need to know about regulators is that they, the same way that we do, manage risks. What are their risks? Their mandate is to protect investors, okay? By the way, here already, if we're talking about semantics, they talk about investors. We talk about traders in this industry. The first panel this morning talked about the thrill, the dream, right? Brokers selling the dream, the thrill of trading. The regulators don't care about the thrill of trading. It's investors, right? They're looking at the capital market. They know that a lot of the public money is there. Our pension funds are there. And they need to make sure it's not about thrill. They need to make sure that that money is safe. So they manage their risk. What are their risks? They protect investors. If an investor gets screwed, in many cases or sometimes, fingers will be pointed at the regulator. If a company closes down because the regulator closed it down because it wasn't happy with its business practice, no one will say anything about it. Right? The public will be silent. So if you're a regulator, what are you going to do? You're going to close down businesses and protect investors. Now, the problem is that the best way to protect an investor, right, is to lock them in a big tower with no windows and no door, throw away the key, and the investor is protected. The investor is going to die of starvation, but he's not going to be screwed by a corrupt broker. And they don't have a real incentive to allow the business. So there's a distorted risk management going on there on the regulator's side. And that's something that we need to take into account. Now, you asked if the regulator wants to kill the business. I'm sure that the answer to that in Cyprus is no. I'm not at all sure that that would be the answer in Israel. I think that the Israel Securities Authority, definitely a year ago, would have been much happier without having to regulate this, this industry. Someone in the first panel used a nice analogy. It's like you show up for a football game and then it turns into rugby. I think it's a good analogy, but we need to switch it around. It started off as rugby, with tackling and being aggressive. But then regulators stepped in and it's turning into football. So it's still a game, there's still a ball, there's still goals, there's still two teams, but the rules of the game are changing. And the rules of the game have to change because financial regulators, not gaming regulators, financial regulators couldn't accept and couldn't live, definitely in the long run, with the way the game was played. The inherent conflict of interest. You can't have that situation. A financial regulator just cannot accept that situation where a broker is making money when its client loses money. This is something that, for a financial regulator, is a very, very difficult concept to live with. Providing investment advice, providing, we can call it investor education, trader education, that should be regulated or is regulated, but without that regulation is problematic. And aggressive sales measures, marketing measures are problematic. All of these things make it very difficult for a regulator to accept.
Thank you, Tzvi. I want to pick up from where Tzvi stopped. You were talking about the balance between the interests of the investors and the interests of the companies, of the brokerages. It seems that it's not a very fair play. So, Maor, would you like to explain a little bit about what the brokers or the platform providers can do to fight it, how they can influence the broker, how they can, make their stand about their interests?
Definitely, but let's, for a second, how many regulators there are in the audience? Alex, you're a regulator, you can raise the hand. How many brokers there are in the audience? Excellent, just to know. So let's look on it from a trader or investor point of view. One, when the investor comes and trade, the broker can manipulate a lot of things in order to make him lose and not letting him play or trade against the market. But the most important thing, and that's what we're seeing happening right now with binary options companies, unfortunately, specifics, that the client deposit the funds, it doesn't matter if he make money or lose money, he invest funds, but the company use the funds in order to grow. And if there is a change in the industry or a PSP doesn't pay the payments in time, the company is going bankrupt and the investor come and see a website and his money is lost. So I strongly believe we need the regulators, and we need, in our market specifically, when there is aggressive selling, regulator is a must. The only issue is, there are two issues. One, unregulated, Peter, I think, will always be there. We can see it on the gaming industries. Casinos in the US, it's $2 billion market, and most probably more than that. So unregulated will be there. The regulators need to be careful enough not to push everyone to the unregulated markets if they're doing over-regulation. But the main issue, I think, and we see it in all the regulation, from Japan to Cyprus to Malta, is that, Tzvi mentioned it perfect, you're coming into a football game and it's becoming a rugby. Today, companies that want to go into this market, big companies are afraid that something will change in the future. We're investing a lot in marketing and building the stuff, but suddenly the leverage will go down to 1 to 10. And that's definitely a game changer. And I think that's the main issue. The rules are changing. We are in a transition mode. I think that in the next year, things will be much more clear, same as the gaming a few years ago.
Okay. Peter, the same question. I'm again picking up from what Tzvi said. How can you influence the regulators, if you can do that?
Yeah, I actually would like to add to this topic that why we facing sometimes like over-regulation is because, first of all, regulators are always behind because the business is developing itself. Business knows what client needs. Business knows the trends, and becomes very technologically advanced. Regulators doesn't know how to stop it, but in the same time, I mean, how to control it, but in the same time, they do have bad cases when some brokers treat client unfair or even just simply steal money. And of course, that kind of give them a bad taste about the whole industry. So they're looking for solutions how to prevent this in the future. And they sometimes, not sometimes, often they come really hard on the entire industry, which is not the case right now for the MiFID II, because I think it's not a kind of blanket solution to protect the investors in the entire EU. But in most cases, that's what regulators do. Okay, so someone did bad advertising, let's just make it so strict so to ensure that pretty much no advertising will be released. Like NFA did. At some point, you're supposed to send your banners before you release them to NFA for approval and wait sometimes up to 2 weeks, which is killing the industry, but they didn't want to kill the industry. That's my opinion. They just didn't know how to proper manage their own risks. Another problem is that industry did not properly communicate with the regulators. So there was some attempts like creating some organizations, like, I remember that was happening in the United States, but the message from the industry was not translated properly to the regulators to explain what the industry is doing actually, what the real problems of the industry and how, and did not offer, I would say, workable solution how to regulate the market. Same things happened in Russia. Like the law is accepted now, it's working, but so many things are missed in this regulation to make it efficient for business. But of course we hope that everything will change. But like I said, the proper dialogue with the regulators need to be established. And that's what we try to do with our organization, because we have a lot of members. I'm constantly trying to reach out to regulators, offer them our solutions, how we do it, and try to educate them basically, because not every financial regulators knows specifically Forex. That's one of the problems of what about the situation that we are in right now.
I want to disagree with all my colleagues over here. I don't think the question really matters.
You sure?
Huh? Well, you guys got the suits on, so
Gotcha.
I'm ready. I'm already ready to fight. So
Or you're ready to run.
Okay. As I was saying, I believe they have the best answers in the world, and you should all, So I really disagree with the premise that the regulators are against the Forex industry. I really don't, I don't believe they really even care about the Forex, CFD, binary option industry. I think the overall trend for them is they want to get rid of as much OTC as possible. So for example, in the US, when they put in Dodd-Frank, so, people talk about the NFA and it's attacking the Forex brokers there, but who's the ones who were really killed by Dodd-Frank and the new regulation? All of the swaps dealers. And swaps dealers are doing whatever the Forex industry in the US is doing. It's a drop in the bucket compared to like the Citibank and Morgan Stanley, all those swap dealers that were they're selling products to their customers and they could charge them whatever they wanted because it was a personal thing. And then what did Dodd-Frank do? Is they're going to have a SEF. We're going to have a swap execution facility, which is basically an ECN for swaps. And when you do a SEF, you're making a trading venue. You're taking this OTC product, which led to a lot of the financial crisis, which has led to a lot of what's going on now. And you're saying all of that is going to be centrally cleared. We're going to have exactly understanding. We're going to know, every buyer is going to have multiple different dealers they could tap into, and they're trying to remove this entire, company, relationship type of business that's undermines OTC, and they're making it into some sort of trading venue product. And even when you look at, for example, if you look at MiFID II. So MiFID II, they're widening out the scope. One of the big things that's taken place is they're saying that, when we talk about a exchange, right, there's OTC, and then there's exchange. So what's an exchange? The London Stock Exchange. We talk about like stock exchange and, futures exchanges. But they're widening it out that now we have these OTFs, MTFs, different types of electronic trading venues that are progressive types of exchanges where are now becoming centrally cleared. So I think the bigger issue is not whether they care whether there's a 100-to-1 margin or traders losing money or not, but they want to know that everything's central clearing, that if something does blow up, there's money there that's already set aside, and that whether you're a huge bank that's the counterparty to a trade or a small investor, there's going to be money all set aside so that all of that is going to be saved and that you're not going to have this entire systematic risk.
Ron, I want to use the chance of you being here to put a focus on MiFID II. It's right around the corner, and from the talks that I had with the members of the industry, I see that there's a lot of uncertainty. Nobody knows for sure what it's going to cover, who will have to report in what way. Can you give us a short review on that, because there were a lot of articles on Finance Magnets, obviously, about this issue, and still there's a lot of uncertainty.
Okay, so I want to preface before whatever I say, because I tend to say many things sometimes. So I think as a broker, I think you really have the obligation to do your own internal gap analysis, to really kind of, either that's talking to an external person, to really kind of do the development, to really understand what's under scope, what do I need to report, how do I get that information? And I think it's very good to read up on it. Just as a little anecdote, I was talking to these option dealers, and he was telling me how he prices, he used to how to price swaps. So he said if a client came into the meeting and he said gamma or delta or anything to do with volatility, then he automatically cut like 90% of the price that he was planning to get, because he says, okay, this guy might know a little bit better, so I have to be better. So I think as a broker, if you're speaking to a consultant or a lawyer and you're already coming in with your own knowledge, it's going to help your conversation with them in order to kind of reduce your own costs. So that's a little side note. In terms of MiFID II, for the Forex and the CFD/binary options industry, I think the big item that's affecting the companies have to deal with is something called transaction reporting. It's a T+1 product and a T+1 report. You take the trades that have to be reported are derivative trades that the underlying product trades on an exchange. So that, for example, that would be, let's say, the FTSE 100 CFD, because that trades on a EU exchange. So not included, not under scope, currently under the interpretations that we know now, are FX would not be included under transaction reporting. Futures that, like things like futures such as that are trading on US exchanges. So that really minimizes what actually has to be reporting. So if you're a Forex broker, really what you're doing right now is you only have to deal with transaction reporting for your CFDs that are based on things that are on the EU exchanges.
I think that best execution also part of the kind of a tricky area.
Can you speak up, Peter?
Yeah, the part of the MiFID is ensure the best execution of orders, and as we speak about Forex companies, mostly dealing on their own account, I think that would be also a tricky part, how you will prove to the regulator that you're ensuring the best execution. I mean, if that's this is one of the questions that probably we don't have answer yet of how they will do it, because as of right now, like even the FCA, they did the big study on how brokers understand the best execution, and most of the OTC, like Forex firms, just simply put this into their agreements that they do the best execution, but none of them understand what exactly they do to ensure the best execution.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that Peter's making, because a lot of times you'll have a client that got slipped and then they'll complain, well, why did I get this price? And then you can go to the client and say, oh, in the terms and conditions, we're providing certain market prices. So companies, it's with MiFID II, it's worth being proactive and actually proving to regulators and your clients how certain executions took place. You know, it was within certain slippage rates and you know, in certain times. And by proving those, like if you have a certain execution requirement that you tell your customers, if you're able to show that, then it gives you a lot of help in terms of dealing with the regulators for MiFID II.
Right, like as a simple example.
Peter,
yeah.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
we want to move on to more questions.
Absolutely.
Joseph, I wanted to ask you, and following what Ron said, you were saying that regulations are not such a big issue, but the thing is that the growing regulatory burden is also an economic burden. You have to expand your compliance departments. You need to hire, you know, agents to help you with the reporting process. So can you give us a glimpse about how it looks like from the broker perspective?
Yeah, sure. Unfortunately, of course, the cost is too high. I believe that smaller firms from now on will face very serious issues and financial issues, and I believe that slowly, a lot of them will shut down. We don't have a way out. We need to have reporting. We have to have all this kind of reportings, all these obligations. It is a very big problem for us as well, but not in terms of we cannot survive. But the problem is that you need to budget every year a huge amount for all this regulation. Companies already know that, so they should be proactive, and instead of spending millions in marketing, they should save some of this money and spend them on regulation, spend them to build a very strong compliance team, hire some in-house lawyers if possible, and most important, I think it's very good, and it's something that we do as well. Brokers should arrange to have meetings with the regulator. When you go and meet the regulator in person, they can explain you. First of all, they will analyze you will analyze your business. They will give you their feedback. So at the end, you will get an immediate result. And since ISEC announced already that they're starting a new round of visits, on-site visits, I think all the firms should take care and speak in advance with the regulator to go and meet them, get ready for the visit, because it's not only the penalty, the financial side of the penalty, but it's also the reputational risk. I'm sure that the serious companies want to avoid having their name in the website of CISEC as being penalized.
Mauro, same question, and if you can explain a little bit on how you help your clients in coping with with the regulations?
Sure, I will try not to market Panda too much. I would just want to say that we are in a very profitable business. If we compare it to other businesses, the trading industry, the brokerage industry, if you know to do it right and you have the right team and the right execution, it's a very profitable business. So I'm not going into any one wallet. I also, as the company, we have a sister company that is CySEC regulated. It's not too much money. It's not a lot to have a few more people that listening to call and making sure that all the things in the business are in order. And with the solution providers like us, like Con's company, there are solutions. I will just give you an example. We are going to next month add a feature that going over in real time all over the calls of the call centers, making the voice into a text, and bringing alerts on flags on specific words like make money, promises, etc. in multiple languages. So it's allowing the broker to better control the call centers. So technology is definitely going to evolve in order to make the broker's life better. The only issue is that because the regulation is changing, things are unclear. In CySEC, we are supporting 12 different brokers. Each one have a different questionnaire and different back office procedures because everyone is translating the regulation in a different way. And I think that in the next few months, things will come into an order. For us as a technology provider is great because as a technology provider, we can add much more value to the brokers, and the entry level become harder for new brokers. Only people with a proper business plan, with a proper budget will come. So I definitely think regulation is a good thing. And I think that today, regulation is not a big burden. The only problem is that it's a lot of headache and it's take a lot of resources because the regulation is changing every time. I will give you an example. Today, at 9 o'clock, I get a call from one of my clients and he's telling me, listen, Maor, in 10 days, we need to change something small in the platform that for client from Spain, after they open a FX trade, you give them 3 seconds, then they can cancel the trade, you erase the trade, and then you give them a fee of €3. Sounds maybe simple, but for us as a technology provider, it takes, and we are quick, it takes at least 1 month to do the server side and also to make it look nice. So I think that's the main challenge today with the regulation, to better understand it, as Peter said, to think a bit ahead, to be a bit more strict with yourself before the regulation comes. You don't need to wait for the regulation to think how to provide a proper service to your client.
I want to not disagree, but provide a caution.
Just want to say that you were friends before this panel.
We'll be friends after as well.
And I'm your client also, so just...
You're
going to be a close friend
money.
after also. Compliance tools are great, but they're not enough. Buying a tool doesn't mean that you can sleep well at night. And I completely agree. Regulations vary and they differ and they change and there are sometimes rapid changes, and electronic tools are very effective. But at the end of the day, I think that it's also a question of a corporate culture. If you say, I'm going to buy a tool and that's going to solve all of my problems, then you're wrong and you're going to get into trouble. At the end of the day, all of the various financial regulation regimes talk about the same things. They talk about fairness, they talk about transparency, they deal with the inherent conflict of interest that exists, okay? It's not a bad thing, it's a fact, between a broker and a client. And this is what the regulators need to address. They need to address, that's their responsibility. And that's what they strive to do. And I think that when you get it, and when you go the extra mile, you take the tool, but you use it to implement and create a corporate culture, then the next time that you have a client that sends you a nasty letter, usually taking a lawyer, and then you need a lawyer to respond, but you're not And what's going through your mind is, God forbid that this client is going to go to the regulator and tell his story, because this can accelerate into a torpedo that makes the whole ship sink. You don't want that. But if you have a tool and you use it correctly and you implement a real corporate culture that really understands and implements fairness and transparency with the clients, then you're not afraid of the letter. And I can tell you that I have clients that we've responded to these to nasty letters, saying, by all means, go to the regulator. We're fine. We're happy. So that's something. I just want to say one more thing, and then you'll jump on me. And this is touching upon something that was mentioned here. It's very important to have a dialogue, an active dialogue with the regulator for two reasons. First of all, this helps you understand what the regulator is looking for. And regulators try, although a lot of times regulation comes in the form of technicalities, but they're really looking at the substance. And it helps you to talk to them to understand what they're looking for. That's the first thing. The second thing is that this dialogue has a true influence. When I was at the Israel Securities Authority and I was working on the legislative amendment that implemented regulation of the Forex industry in Israel, and I can tell you now that the model that I was working on looked nothing like the final result. But I can tell you that I went to brokers and I met with them and I spoke with them, and that was my main source of information.
Tzvi, I want to stop you there for a second. I want you to take, very shortly, we would like to have a glimpse on what goes on behind closed doors of the regulators. People want to know about the process, how you decide on the fact that tomorrow morning people are going to receive an email saying that they need to do something like Maor said, some process that is going to be more beneficiary for the investors, or any other issue that may be, also with regards to enforcing. So please just give us a short glimpse on what goes on there.
Tzvi, just before you answer, you have to remember, most of us, our appreciation, our understanding of what goes behind closed doors is from South Park. You know, the South Park fans, when they had the global financial crisis, we had a little chicken running around and they would cut off, and wherever that landed was what they decided. So.
Okay. Can't beat that, right? So as I said, this goes back to the first thing that I said. Regulators manage their risks. And by the way, regulators don't have infinite manpower or women power. The Israel Securities Authority, that is fierce and aggressive, has 200 employees. Okay, there are 15 investigators. And as the head of enforcement, when I was there, I used to think about every case very hard, because if I decide to go forward with something, that means that it's, instead of 15 available employees, I have now 14, right, or 13. So they're managing their risk. They also want to give the industry the impression that they're everywhere. That's very difficult to do. They don't see a lot. They don't see most of what's going on. But they try to give you the impression that they could see you, that they know what you're doing. So what you're going to see is you're going to see a mixture of big cases with big players, but then also smaller regulators and smaller players that will receive a letter, that will receive, you'll see criminal investigations, the Israel Securities Authority, the police. We had a case, I think it was in the news last week, okay? Someone from the binary option industry that was arrested in Israel by the police, not the Israel Securities Authority. So you have that, but you also have, right, a letter that I'm sure a lot of you as brokers received from a regulator in a certain country telling you, hey, you know, what you're doing here is, you know, not, you need a license, and you say, fine, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that anymore, and you block out whatever, right, Belgian clients. So they're managing their risks, and they also have political agendas, and I think that there's currently a legislative amendment that the Israel Securities Authority is promoting that is going to kill the binary option industry in Israel completely. And not only for Israelis, but based in Israel, looking outside. And this is something that when I look at this, it's unprecedented. It's hard for me to understand because this is the first time in the history of the Israel Securities Authority that what it's doing is it's going out to protect non-Israeli investors. So this is something that is far-fetched that I can only explain by a political agenda.
Thank you, Tzvi. We'll have a short round with all of the panel members. I want to ask you a very simple question. When we meet here a year from now, or maybe 2 years from now, where will the industry, where will the regulation process of the industry will go? What will happen in terms of the industry? What will the regulators decide? In your opinion, you can't, predict this, but in your opinion, what do you think will happen in the following year or two? Please.
I think that the industry will not close in any case. What will change though is the number of players in the industry. It will be much less. It will be, as we said, much more expensive to survive in the industry. The regulatory regime will be much more completed after a couple of years, and especially after the implementation of MiFID II. So the same, we'll see less aggressive marketing, less client complaints maybe, but I'm sure that these things will never stop. As we said before, the brokers and the technology providers and everyone are so many worldwide, and the regulator in each country is the FCA is just 3,000, and they have 73,000 regulated firms. So it's very difficult for the regulator to catch up all the time and run after the firms. So definitely the market will still operate, but with less players, it's my opinion, and with a much more strict regime.
Look at banks, look at brokers in the major stock exchanges, and that's where the industry is going. 10 years, 5 years ago, in Malta, the regulator didn't know if binary options need to be regulated by the gaming authority or by the financial services authority. So now that question has been answered, and once it has been answered in favor of the financial service industry and regulation, that's where we're heading. So definitely consolidation, but the reason for consolidation is because you don't have unregulated banks. No one's going to deposit money in an unregulated bank. So that's what you're going to see. You're going to see regulated entities that learn how to live with regulation, and I agree with you, Mo. It's right now the industry is still fighting it. Once you stop fighting it and understand that it's here to stay, and it even has some good things about it, then you start focusing on growing your business with those rules. And that's where we're going.
Thank you. I also agree with you. 1 year from now, we'll see brands. Today we have a lot of brokers. We don't have a lot of brands, big brands. So definitely, if you have a big brand, I believe that for $500, the client don't care if you're regulated or not. And if you have a company culture, a proper company culture, people will look you up in Google and you see that you didn't steal money and they will invest with you. So I think brands will choose the regulation and financial commission will grow, for example, because they're offering a more convenient way to be regulated.
Peter is happy.
For sure. This is one. 2, I will do it quickly. 2, we will see reducing the call centers. The call centers will become a more support than a call centers, a lot of automation. 3, we will see a more simplified Forex, simplified CFD. Today, most of the brokers are offering 600 CFDs. In 1 year, we'll see 10,000 or 20,000 CFDs. And I believe we will see the industry growing in 1 year because the marketing guys are very clever, and then they will find the tricks to bring people, even with the questionnaire, with the complicated questionnaire. And I hope to see everybody next year. Thank you very much.
All right. I agree, of course, that companies will look into, I would say, more easier regulations, especially for the clients that are not from EU, because saying that regulation will become much more effective, but much more complex, of course, much more expensive. And when you look at the pretty much your compliance costs and your regulatory risks, you know, in case you reported something wrong, because there will be also fines if you report mistakenly, you know, didn't report something. So looking at the average deposit, let's say from the clients from, I don't know, Southeast Asia or Asian region, like other regions rather than EU, most companies will probably prefer to send those clients to easier regulations like offshore regulations. There are not many left, of course, but we have Vanuatu right now, we have Belize still going on, which is also will be, regulation in Belize will get tougher. I actually met with IFSC in March. I went to Belize myself and met them in person. So even they looking into make their...
So there's a real place like...
There is a real place, yes.
Oh, just kidding. There's great diving there.
Lacking on resources, of course, but still thinking of how to survive because they about to raise capital 5 times, which is significant for offshore license. But anyway, I believe that most of the brokers, even the big names, will establish offshores, will get licensed over there and send customers, none from the EU, to there. And like having, let's say, prestigious regulation like such as FCA or any MiFID country will benefit to the brand itself and will make the client feel that they still protected even if they trade not at London specifically. But that's the way they're going to move. And we can see it already now because a lot of companies established in Vanuatu. Like it was 100 last year, 375 I believe as of last month.
Just as a comment, I think it's a big mistake to cooperate in Vanuatu because...
It might be a mistake. I'm just
But
saying what's going on.
We'll have to discuss that in a different...
Yeah, sorry.
So, but this would be I believe, the trend for the nearest future. But later on, like I said, I still believe that as we said that some regulators will go after companies that work with the clients from other jurisdictions. So that will make the company to finally, find somewhere a better regulatory regime and comply with the rules.
Thank you. Ron?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest trend I'm seeing that really started about 6-7 months ago is, first of all, just as far as the changes, I don't think there's going to be any drastic changes. But what I do see in the next year or two is with the MiFID II is the unification of regulators adopting the same thing. Like, different regulators, ones in, you mentioned Malta and, the UK, CISEC, they're interpreting things differently. And one thing that we're seeing now, there's more across the regulators themselves are sitting down or coming into agreement. What's the proper, how do we do marketing correctly? You don't want the German regulators upset that the CISEC companies are doing things differently. So I think one of the things that MiFID II is supposed to do is supposed to be more cross-EU unification of interpretation of rules. So I think they put the rules in, they put all these crazy headlines, and now they're just going to say, okay, now we're going to try to apply it across the EU. And I think that's going to be the next, the trend for the next year or two. And then comes Brexit, and then, everybody goes haywire.
And I think there will be much more collaboration between regulators because as the new MiFID II will kicks in, some people will, like regulators will still saying how to implement it because I'm sure that not every regulator still understand what it is completely. And so they're going to be looking for the better examples. So more collaboration, more information exchange, and
anyhow, the real estate prices in Cyprus will go up.
Okay, so thank you everybody for the live and interesting discussion. We have time for one question or more than that. Any questions from?
If it's short, we could do 2.
Any questions from the audience for the panel members?
You have here a round table of experts. I would definitely use that.
I don't think it's okay. It's polite to say it's a good question, but Vanuatu specifically, it's when you open a regulation, you do it for clients or you do it for banking purposes. banking purposes don't recognize Vanuatu as any kind of regulation. Also, clients don't recognize it. We see a lot of clients. I have at least 5 clients that open Vanuatu, and they just needed to open another structures. There are a few lawyers that recommend for specific reasons to go to Vanuatu, but we see a lot of brokers that need to find another structure because it's not, you can't open a brokerage with that.
Thank you.
Other, if you have a CISEC STP brokerage and you need to find a solution offshore, then CISEC recognize Vanuatu for now.
All everyone.
Anybody else? Other questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much to all of our
you.
speakers for a lively and upbeat discussion. I don't know
Thank you.
about you, but I will never see billions the same again after hearing Tzvi. Later on the day, we have at 2 a state-of-the-art in AI and automation panel right here. Later on at 3 o'clock, a liquidity roundtable, followed by a keynote speech by Google on FX trends. And lastly, at 4:45, payments processing and its discontents. Thank you. Enjoy the day.